demonstration. But this transmission is basically dedicated to the gathering of the masters, which was basically a small fraction of the galvanization of the 144,000. So a lot of people who went to the event, they had a really good experience, and the great majority of the experience, it was kind of like one of those things where you had the great majority of people from the whole infrastructure of the conscious community, and we were just all in one big lump sum in one big event, and it turned out to be great. You had me, KT, the arch degree, Asir Ducateers, you had Black Dot, you had Professor Griff, you had the great majority of everybody that basically drops the gems when it comes to this great awakening process. So shout out to Brother Rich. He did his thing with that whole event. And in my opinion, I think he should, take that event and do it on the West Coast, do one on the South, do one in the Midwest, and do one out up north on the East Coast. So we also going to get into some Q&A. And me and Rod Hayes, we have a demonstration that's coming up, and we're going to be talking about the conjuration process of blood magic and how it's tied and connected to the infrastructure of the socio-political aspect of civics. When you're talking about Babylonian blood magic and Babylonian sex magic, Babylonian money magic. So we're going to be talking about that. Me and Rod Hayes got a lot of receipts that basically propagates the intrinsic information. So we're going to wait till we get some more people in before we start out. We're going to wait till we hit about 500. So if you will, share the live on whatever social media platform that you got. That way, we can get the edification out. And we're also going to be talking about do a lot of Q&A. And the reason I don't, a lot of people have been asking me why I don't have my original backdrop is because I'm getting some electrical work done in my house. So right now I'm going to be down, doing stuff in the front room and stuff and things of that nature. But yes, me and Rod Hayes definitely got something going on coming up in the near future. Next Thursday, we're going to do a broadcast. We're going to be talking about many different things when it comes to this great awakening process, because a lot of people are very much confused when it comes to the political infrastructure. We're going to be talking about the whole process of the restoration of the matriarch, and we're going to show publications and documents that basically supports that claim. So, like I said, man, hit that like, hit that subscribe button. Hold on for a second. And I might put some people up here, to ask questions. I'm not sure. I might just keep it on an autonomous level. But when we get to the Q&A, the first questions that's going to be asked is the private chats or the super chats. Those are the first ones that's going to be mandated. But yeah, gathering the masses, very good turnout. I had a good time. And it was one of those things. I've never been to a big event like that when it came to the conscious community. And that whole process in itself was, I was overstimulated, because not in a bad way or a negative way. I'm just saying I was overstimulated because I wasn't, I was surprised on how many people showed up to the whole gathering. And it was one of those things where a lot of people, you got to experience that whole event that took place. It was something magical. It was something very intrinsic. It was something very revolutionary that took place, and the energy, it had like a Wakanda energy to it. So it was a very good turnout. Very good turnout. So when you're talking about the context of so-called Black excellence, that was basically the precursor to that, of what you've seen at Black Wall Street at the Gathering of the Masses in Atlanta, Georgia. It was phenomenal. It was a very good turnout. We had people coming from everywhere. You had a guy, he flew in from Iraq. You had people from Utah. You had people who drove all the way from, back home in New York City. You had people from Chicago, Detroit. You had people from everywhere. You know what I'm saying? And like I said, this Great Awakening process, what took place was not a coincidence. The Lionsgate portal had just opened up, and the Lionsgate portal was open until August 15th or the 17th, I believe. So it was not a coincidence that that energy portal pulled in all this, this intrinsic vibration and put everybody in one landmass. So it was very powerful, very powerful. You had Queen Afua, you had Sister Myra Moss, you had Soleil, you had a lot of people there that was, propagating the knowledge for years. So it feels very good to be included with those individuals when it comes to the gathering of the masses. I think the last one was in 2018, and they also have, you can look up some of the ones in the past. They had the ones with Bobby Hemmett. It was some that was also, I think Dr. Khalid Muhammad was also a part of the gathering of the masters. So like I said, it was a very good turnout. And for me, like I said, I'm very introverted. So it's one of those things where, when it comes to events like that, like I said, I was very much overstimulated, but in a good way. So, and me and Yaki Awakening, me and him, we have a demonstration and a transmission we're going to be putting together here pretty soon. And I talked to him not too long ago after the gathering of the masses. So me and Yaki, we got something coming up pretty soon. Me and Rod Hayes, we got something dropping next Thursday. Some heavy receipts talking about the blood oath secrecy in the Draconian Constitution on how they propagate Babylonian blood magic within the infrastructure of their political system and how they use those organizations to extract the energy of the chosen people on the planet. But yeah, we can get into some Q&A, man. Like I said, first questions that's going to be asked are the ones that send in super chats. Okay, we got one right here. How are you preparing for the deities to surface? Like I said, when you get into the whole aspect of the Christ consciousness, they said that the chosen ones is going to have a seal on their forehead, right? And that's basically the embodiment of the activation of a scroll of all. The scroll of all is your chakra system. So when you unlock the seventh seal within you, these entities that live in the lower fourth dimension that don't take corporeal form, they won't be able to attack you because you have that Christ energy. You have the Christ consciousness, right? And I believe it's in Revelations. It doesn't talk about the return of the so-called Jesus, the return of the Christ energy. So when you tap into that interstellar gateway of the halls of Amenti and you do your shadow work and you tap into the process of self-realization, that's when you're able to embark upon those frequencies to where nothing can infiltrate your cipher because you'll be spiritually protected, basically. That's what it's all about. So you got to level up from a mental standpoint. And a lot of people, when it comes to the conscious community, a lot of people get this whole perception and this ideology that everything has to just be so spiritual. Like I said, it's not all about crystals and head wraps and the aesthetic of looking spiritual. It's one of those things where you have to, this is what I call the level up. When you're going through that process of leveling up on a physical level, I call it the prison mindset. So sometimes you got to use the matrix in order to get out, because it's all based upon the fact that you have to go through this process of, solitude, and solitude puts you in a state of tunnel vision. Tunnel vision is the interstellar portal that helps you get to the gateway of your level up. So you got to activate that prison mentality in a form of liberation, meaning that you have to lock yourself down and be grounded to where you basically create this process on how, when you studying, just like when people in jail, they get to studying and they work on themselves, they work on their body. You got to create that form of equilibrium. Because like I said, if you work out more than you read, you still out of shape, right? And if you read more than you work out, you're still out of shape. So you got to cultivate the balance. So you see a lot of people when they go to prison, a lot of them, you know what I'm saying, their spirit is right. You know what I'm saying? They working on themselves. They doing their push-ups. They doing their edification. They in the law library to get the understanding about the civics and the politics and how to free themselves, right? So the great majority of people, man, that's what it's all about. It's all about leveling up on the mental level. So I'm gonna get to another question. I keep hearing. I'm not sure what that is, but I can get back to this question if you give me some type of some context to it. I guess he didn't have nothing to say, but I appreciate the super chat. All right, we're gonna get to some more questions. But the level up in itself is all about working on yourself. You can't just be so subjected to, relying on crystals and relying on things that basically doesn't really have intrinsic value. You can always upgrade your physiology. You know what I'm saying? That's what it's all about. Upgrade the mental and upgrade your body. So that's where we want to shift the whole paradigm when it comes to that mindset. Trying to get to the questions, but it's not showing me nothing. Okay. Like I said, we going to answer some questions. Okay, I think we got another super chat here. What would be attacked by the deities and physical third? Now, I just answered the question. When you're talking about the infiltration of these archonic forces that don't take corporeal form, what's happening is it's one of those things where the whole process is all about upgrading your mental faculties to where you're no longer subjected by the holonomic brain theory, which is the conscious energy grid that connects you to the grid system of third density. So soon as you think outside the box, that's what they're talking about. Because when you look at the geometrical shape of planet Earth, when you're talking about the platonic solids, a hexahedron is basically the embodiment of planet Earth because it's made up of carbon, right? So in order to break out of that mental prison, right, because we are light body trapped inside of a light prism, which is a prison. So when you break free mentally, that's when you're able to tap into the higher dimensions for astral travel and things of that nature. So like I said, these entities that don't take corporeal form, they won't be able to attack you because your frequency is so high. So this is the same concept when you see something, when you see molecules and atoms, and when they speed up in vibration, it basically extracts the negative energy. So that's what planet Earth is actually doing. Anything that's basically cancerous to the planet is getting extracted, right? So that's what the Great Awakening process, when you're talking about the galactic shift, right? Because we all know when you understand and you study the perceptual circle of the equinox, the Draconian star constellation was basically controlling everything under the Draconian constitution by way of the Piscean energy, the Taurus energy, and the Aries energy, which is the age of mankind. And the age of mankind was basically the clay age. The clay age is the embodiment of the lunar cycle, right? Because when you get to the inception point of the first sun cycle, right, everything was matriarchal. Everything was facilitated by a republic. And a republic is for the people. So that's why the United States government, right, is a corporation. Uniform Commercial Code, Title 18, Section 3002. The United States of America denotes ownership of a certain demographic of people, which is why you call it a citizen, meaning that you're basically a municipal slave to the demonstrative government. So that's why I said it's imperative to understand civics, because it works in tandem with metaphysics and spirituality. Because if you don't know one, you don't know the other, right? So, do you have any future? Let me see what Catalea said. He said, do you have any future books? I'm actually gonna put out a big publication. It's gonna be one big book, and it's gonna be called The Sacred Book of the Chosen. And it's going to be one of those books where it's going to be like it's going to be like it's going to be an ontological artifact. It's going to be something that you want to keep, because the way I'm going to present it is going to look like a big sacred book, like some Harry Potter type shit. It's going to be a really nice, the presentation is going to look really good. So when I put that book out, it's really going to give you the steps of self-realization and how to do, ancient Kemetic rituals on how to tap into the chosen one energy. So I got that coming out probably at the top of next year. And I'm going to get some, eventually some shirts made too in the future. So let me see. But yeah, the shirt go crazy. Yeah, shout out to the master teacher, Noble Ali, who was doing his edification to free the people by way of the Moorish paradigm. Let me see. We got some more questions. Like I said, a lot of people don't be wanting me to go live. And now that I go live, ain't nobody got no questions. Because like I said, this is one of those things you can ask me anything. What are your thoughts on voting? Should we vote? Okay. My bad. It's not the right question. Okay. Just me and Rod Hayes, we talked on the phone for about 3 hours yesterday. And when you understand that voting, this is what they do when it comes to democracy. Democracy is a form of the extraction of Babylonian blood magic. Because when you participate in fraud, you can't claim injury to the system, right? So the injury in itself is the Babylonian blood magic that is facilitated by the Jesuit oath, right? And the Jesuit oath is being facilitated and galvanized by the Khazars, and the Khazars are the Ukrainian mafia, right? Because when you look at the Khazarian Tamga, the Khazarian Tamga is the same as the Ukrainian crest, which is the sigil of Lucifer. So these beings who run the whole corporate infrastructure of democracy is basically derived from ancient Babylon, right? So democracy in itself, this is why they propagate this is why they propagate voting to black people when it comes to democracy, because democracy is the epitome of black degradation. They're not for reconstruction. You don't get restitution, reparations. You don't get justice within the factions of democracy and liberalism, right? Because as I was telling you before, you got to study etymology. Where does the word democracy come from? It means demonic rulership. When you look at the suffix of the word krasi, it means kratos. Kratos is father time, right? Because we're trapped in time. We're trapped in an artificial time analysis mechanism. We're trapped in a time loop of consciousness to where you can't think outside the box, right? Because when you look at planet Saturn, they have the cube of Saturn on top. And the cube of Saturn extracts subatomic particles of energy, right? To where you're subjected to the energy extraction matrix. So planet Earth is basically a loose farm to extract the energy of the chosen ones and the chosen people who belong to this planet, right? That's what it's all about. So fasting is another way to speed up your vibration. But I'm going to get back to the voting thing, though, because like I said, voting is how voting and reparations and things of that nature is the carrot on the stick. That's what it is. It's a trap. It's another way to trap you to the artificial construct of democracy, right? So all this stuff, like I said, if you don't understand the historical context of where democracy came from, because the demo system in 1833 was being engineered by the secret treaty of Verona. That was the inception point of when patriarchy basically reversed the polarity of a republic and transmuted the matriarch into a patriarchal civilization. That's what it was all about. That's what the secret treaty of Verona was all about, right? That's how they infiltrated us. That's how they created ecclesiastical law. That's the embodiment of their system. So when you vote, you're voting yourself right back into the caste system of democracy, right? Which makes you non-descendable. because you don't have no type of political allegiance, right? Because when you have political allegiance, that ties you to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, that tells you to the Indigenous People Act, because your etheric cord connects you to the planet, which gives you a nationality. Because the word nationality comes from the word nativity. Nativity is your birthright to the planet, right?